Emma was a successful psychologist, but she was lost in the dark recesses of her own mind. A trauma from her past had led her to an increasingly isolated life. She locked herself in a cabin deep in the woods, far from the city. Here, he thought, he could escape the ghosts of the past, but the stone walls of the hut and the silence of the forest would turn into an unexpected nightmare. In the first days, everything seemed normal. Emma spent her days writing, hiking in the forest and listening to the sounds of nature. However, from the fourth night onwards, strange things began to happen. In the middle of the night, she heard footsteps outside the cabin. When she looked out of the window, she could see nothing in the darkness of the forest, but the noises continued. It was as if someone was walking around the hut, knocking on the door. Emma thought it might be an animal, but she couldn't help feeling that something was wrong. The next morning, she found no trace of it around the cottage. However, there was a small mud stain on the doorstep. This made him even more uneasy. During the day, he tried to write, but he could not concentrate. In the evening, the footsteps started again. This time, they were closer. Emma was locked inside the hut. When she looked out of the window, she saw a shadow deep in the forest. The shadow looked human, but its movements were unnatural. It was as if something was watching her. Emma tried to calm herself. Perhaps loneliness and lack of sleep were making her mind wander. However, during the night, the voices she heard and the shadows she saw began to distort her perception of reality. In the morning, he noticed strange things inside the hut. Things had been moved. On the table, he found a handwritten note. "You are not alone here." Emma thought that maybe she had written the note herself. Maybe she had been sleepwalking, but the handwriting was not hers. This frightened her even more. Was there someone else in the cabin, or was her mind playing tricks on her? As the days passed, Emma's condition worsened. The lack of sleep made her increasingly paranoid. Every night, she heard footsteps and whispers. Inside the cabin, there were clicks coming from behind the walls. One night, he woke up to see a shadow on the edge of his bed. It was a faceless figure leaning over her. Emma screamed and turned on the light, but there was nothing there. The next day, Emma decided to go to town. But when she walked into the forest, she couldn't find the path. It was as if the forest wanted to keep her inside. Every direction she went, she returned to the hut. This was the beginning of the end for her. He could no longer leave the hut. His stocks of food and water were running out. Her mind was clouded by hunger and exhaustion. One night, Emma woke up and realized that someone was inside the hut. Shadows were moving on the walls, approaching her. Emma thought it was a hallucination, but the shadows were touching her. A cold, sticky touch. The shadows began to whisper in her mind. "We've been waiting for you. We've always known about you." Emma remembered her past car accident. She had lost her best friend in that accident. The shadows were playing on her guilt. "You killed her. Now you will be punished," they whispered. Emma screamed and tried to escape from the cabin, but the doors and windows were locked. Shadows surrounded her on all sides. Emma finally gave up. The shadows had taken over her completely. Her mind was no longer in touch with reality. Inside the cabin, she lived in a world of shadows. Days, weeks, months passed. Emma was lost in the depths of the forest. Those who came looking for her found the hut empty, but there was a note on the table. "You are not alone here." The forest had swallowed Emma, and the shadows were waiting for their next victim.